guys, I hope you're doing well today. Today I decided to make a video that is pretty simple. It's just me throwing on a wheel. And I remember when I was in college, videos like this would have been really helpful. So the first thing I'm doing is just slamming down a bag of clay. The clay that I use is a porcelain clay. And so for some reason when you slam it down, all the particles kind of decompress and it's just really nice. So basically what I'm doing is loosening the clay particles, and it works really well for me when I do it this way. Um, so once I do that, me going into the house, um, the next thing I'm going to do is just take the clay, put it on the table, and what I'm doing now is taking the bag of clay. Do I have to explain every little tiny thing? Maybe not. Just taking a bag of clay and I'm cutting off pieces of the clay to make 2 mugs. This was a couple of days ago. I'm getting ready to make a cauldron mug and a regular mug. So now I'm going to weigh the clay. I usually, well, I'm prone to leaving a lot of clay on the bottom of my pieces, and so I usually throw a little on the heavy side, 1 pound, and usually it's around 1/4 of a pound to 1/2 of a pound. And right here I'm just gauging the weight basically. I usually don't keep it perfect, but this is kind of all I do. And then right here I'm taking off a little bit of the clay to make sure both of the pieces are around the same height. If you're a production potter, this is a very crucial step to making sure your clay is going to be as uniform, all your pieces will be as uniform as possible. Because I'm not a production potter and these pieces are not going to be the same weight and size and stuff, it doesn't really matter. But I do like to weigh the clay out just to make sure that I don't use too much clay. Now the next thing I'm doing right now is called wedging. And wedging the clay is basically you just pull your hands down and then pull back. So basically when you're throwing down the clay and pulling back, you're taking your hands, using the palms of your hands and spreading the clay out away from you. And then this is how I wedge. There's so many different ways of wedging, but basically I press the clay down and away from me, and then I pull back with my fingers. And the reason why we wedge is because we want to get all of those air bubbles and all of those clay particles together, get all the air bubbles out of the clay. I usually don't, well, technically you don't need to wedge like de-aired clay like this so much, but it's what I do. It's kind of like a habit, and I like to make it into a cone shape. Now up here, the next thing I have is like the different tools that I'm going to be using. And I will talk about those tools as I'm using them. The first step to throwing is putting your clay on the pottery wheel. And so now basically what you're going to do is just make sure the clay is even, and you're going to take your tools, make sure they're all in front of you. And what I like to do is like wet the clay a little bit so that it's not so much friction in my hands, and that's what most potters do. And what I'm doing right now is just kind of centering. So I'm just taking the clay, centering the clay, trying to make sure the clay is together. You're trying to make the clay into the center of the wheel. Just think of it as like the earth, and the reason why the earth rotates. Well, I don't know if it's the reason why, but when the earth rotating, everything, gravity is pulling us in. And so we're all stuck on the earth, like in the side of the earth, you know what I mean? And so basically what you're trying to do is just get everything kind of stuck in the middle, and the centrifugal force will work on your side. But also I like to use 2 different positions. Right now I'm using the 1 o'clock position, where you take I take my right hand and then I cup it with my left hand and I pull towards myself. You can also bear both elbows on your knees, which is something that I do sometimes. When you bear both elbows on your knees, you do get that inner body strength. It's coming from basically your core. It's not coming from your fingers, because if you keep doing that, it'll hurt your fingers. So now I'm pretty much centered. It's a fun process. So I'm pretty much centered, and right now I'm just getting some more water to make sure everything's like there's not that much friction. And the next thing I'm going to do is open the clay. So opening the clay is very simple and straightforward. You take your sponge and go right directly into the middle of the clay, and then you pull the sponge towards you. And then also you just make sure you kind of clean up your bottom so that it's not messy. You want a straight bottom, just a flat bottom. And don't pull too deep. When you're open, don't open too deep, and don't pull so hard, because you don't want to throw it off center. Right now, I'm compressing the clay, making sure my bottom is nice and tight so that I don't get S-cracks. And porcelain clay is very prone to S-cracks, so just make sure you compress, compress, compress. Just keep remembering to compress. Compress more than you think you do. And I kind of feel like I didn't compress enough, but I don't know if you see, I'm also smoothing and compressing at the same time. So now what's next is something called pulling up the sides. And basically what you're doing is, I added more water too, so there could be like less friction. And so basically what I'm doing is I have my left hand and my right fingers, my left fingers and my right fingers at the same position on the wall of the piece. So they're at the same position, I guess, for either side. And so when you push on both like sides like that, the clay has nothing to do but go up. It has nowhere to go but go up. And I don't know if you saw, I had a little wobble because I pulled up too fast. So make sure you're always very careful with pulling. You're doing it. You do need to go somewhat fast so that you don't make any like hasty moves. But you also do need to take your time. Just make sure you take your time when you're doing it. There's like this sweet spot for throwing with a certain amount of speed versus making sure you're going up fast enough. So just make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. So the next thing you're doing is, so now I'm just trying to make sure the bottom is nice and compressed. Trying to still pull up those sides, just making sure everything's like nice and neat. And I'm pretty happy with the rim of the mug. You can tell there's a little bit of a wobble, but it's not too bad. And now I'm going to use this tool. It's like a scraping tool. I like it because it kind of makes your sides all nice and neat. It gets out all the ridges from your fingers. And it's a great tool to have. Usually they're in anyone's like standard beginner's pottery kit. And I love that tool. I use it all the time. Every time I lose it, I'm like, where is it? And also use your sponge and make sure you're getting out all of the clay on the inside of the pottery piece, because if you leave clay and water and anything like that in the bottom of your pottery piece, it will be prone to cracking as well. So just make sure you clean out your bottoms and they're all nice and neat. Yeah, so basically that's about it. I'm just trying to clean up my bottom, make it all clean, and there we go. So the next step is pretty fun. It's cutting off the excess clay on the bottom of the piece. I use this tool. I'm sure there's a name for all these tools. I'll look it up in a little bit just to make sure. Cutting bottom off piece tool. But anyway, I just take the tool and press into the bottom at an angle. Usually, I want to say maybe half of a 90 degree. And then next thing I get is my wire cutter, and I take the wire cutters, start at the furthest away from you, like right across from you, and pull down. You're always taking your thumbs and pressing on the bottom of the wire, and you're pulling slow as the wheel is turning. And so while the wheel turns, it you can take off the piece of clay. It's really cool. It's like this whole cool thing. I've noticed different potters do different things. Some potters take the edge scraper tool, the one with the pointy end, and they take that tool and kind of scrape up the bottom. I don't really do that. I like to cut it away. It's just fun that way. That's the way I was taught in college, so it's kind of, I just kept doing it that way. And there you go. You have a nice little cup. Isn't that fun? So the next thing I'm going to do is, this is the cauldron mug that I'm making. And I'm not going to talk during this part. I just want you to see how I make it. And yeah, we'll go from there. So the next piece I'm going to do, or the next thing I'm going to show you guys that I learned to do is centering your form to trim. So I have a Griffin grip. I usually use my Griffin grip, but here I just decided to do it the old-fashioned way. This is called a tapping method, which I don't do very well at all. You're not supposed to tap at the side. I think you're, it's like, whoa. You're supposed to more so tap at 11 o'clock on the piece. And I was just like, whatever, I'm not going to do this. So you can use a needle tool or any sharp pointed tool. And what you're going to try to do is you're going to make these little lines and these little marks. And what that's doing is showing you that it's off center. And whenever you see a mark, as you see right here, that mark in the clay, you push it away from yourself. And what you're doing is that you're trying to get to a point where the piece is at the center of the wheel. Oh, also, it's been a couple of days have passed. So these pieces are, they're not leather hard, they're before leather hard. They're still a little soft so that you can attach handles, but it's porcelain, so it's kind of buttery. But just make sure that your piece can withstand, it's dry enough to withstand form, but not too dry to where it's you're trimming clay dust, and clay dust isn't good for you. Makes your throat dry. Actually, a lot of bad things can happen to you because it's silica. Silica's not good for you. So just be careful when you're working with clay, especially at home. So anyway, so now I got it centered. I kept pushing the piece away from me. Sometimes I push it towards me. And now I got it centered in the middle of the wheel. So the next thing we're going to do is add 4 pieces of clay to the bottom. I used a little bit of water. At first I'm like trying to make it into a log form. And then I dip it in a little bit of my slip, which is basically just clay, watered down clay that I used to throw. And you're holding down a piece, not making sure it's not going anywhere because you've already centered it. You don't want to center it again. And then you're taking your pieces of clay and you're going across from each other. So it's like one side and then the other side is parallel. And then you do the next piece, the third piece, and the fourth one the same way. So they're all parallel from each other. And that way you're anchoring the piece to the board and to itself. So now you get to trim. So you use your trimming tool, and the trimming tool is so cool. I think one of my favorite parts to throwing is trimming. It's just so satisfying to see the ribbons of clay. And I hope that I do switch a camera at some point because it is so cool seeing the ribbons just like flowing off. I know that I kind of wish I would have filmed it more. I thought I had moved the camera. Oh, there you go. But you see how the ribbons of clay just come off? It's so pretty, isn't it? It's like these little curly tendrils. It's so beautiful. So now you're just trying to just take those pieces off, and you're basically trying to take as much clay off as possible, but making sure you're not going too deep, because if you go too deep, then you're going to carve into the piece, and that would suck. And you won't be able to use your piece anymore. So just make sure that you're doing it justice. You're making sure that you're not carving too deep. Some people like to use a needle tool. They take a needle tool and poke at the bottom while the piece is like sitting upright. They poke to the bottom and they stop their finger at the bottom of the poke to see on the inside to see how thick it is, and then they trim the half of that. I've been doing it for so long, I kind of feel and know where it's at. I was taught the tapping method where you tap on the bottom to hear how hollow it is. I don't even use that method really. I think I just kind of use my intuition. So with the inside, I was yakking on about that, but with the inside, what you're trying to do is basically clean off the inside to make a foot, and there you go. Yeah. So if you do need more direction with this part, because I did kind of skip over it pretty fast, just let me know in the comments if you are kind of confused about that part. But basically you're just trying to trim clay create your foot starting from, especially the top. You start from the inside. Sometimes I start from the outside to mark my foot, and then I trim out to in. I know some people that trim in to out. I don't trust myself because I need that. I need that registration mark to make sure I don't trim too much, too far in or too far out. But yeah, this is a nice form. I love those forms where it's like kind of bigger at the bottom and kind of tapered to the top. That's kind of my signature form. So now, what am I doing? Oh, I'm taking a piece of clay and rolling it out and tapping the bottom. This is what I do to make handles. First, I just need to score. And scoring is basically making scratch marks on the clay body, and you're also making scratch marks on the piece of clay as well. And I don't know if I skipped that part, I might have. Making scratch marks at the top where you want the handle, the top of the handle to start. And you're making scratch marks at the bottom where you want the handle to taper down to. And you're also, there you go, yeah, I did scratch it. So you're scratching the handle part as well. And then you wet it, add some slip, or I like to use a little bit of vinegar, as you can tell in that top left-hand corner. I use a little bit of vinegar. So basically what you're trying to do is you're just tapering it down, making sure that handle adheres very well to the piece. Just be careful and just make sure it adheres very well. And you're just smoothing out the handle, smoothing out the handle. No cracks, no crevices, no bumps. And I've noticed with porcelain, I started pulling my handles more so, and I'll show you what pulling is. That's me adding slip to it so that I can smooth out the handle part so that when I start pulling, it's nice and smooth and I'm not dragging the handle part. I've never milked a cow before, but I was told that this is kind of how you milk a cow. Maybe not, I don't know. Let me know if it is or not. But basically you're just wetting the piece, making sure there's no friction. It's just smooth and as silky as possible. And you're using the slightest pressure from between your thumb and that finger, and you're just pulling down and pulling down. I also rotate my hand because I don't want the impression to be like to one side, because it's easy for it to be bigger or smaller on one side. I also make sure I kind of smooth out the bottom, see how it's going to look, and just kind of tilt the mug to the side to make sure when you're attaching the bottom part of the handle that it's kind of secured the way it should be secured. And you just kind of break off a piece, taper the handle down, break off a piece, press it to the bottom of the cup, and then I like to use the excess clay as like a coil form to wrap around that bottom. And I take one of my tools that I forgot to tell you guys about, but I like this tool a lot. It's just a wooden tool. You probably could find it at a craft store. And I use it to kind of smooth out that bottom. And I did use it earlier to smooth out the top too. And you're just trying to make that coil disappear. The coil is what attaches the bottom of the handle to the piece. I'm just trying to make sure it's like not blurry. There we go. And you're just trying to attach that bottom of that handle to that piece to make sure that it's not going anywhere, but to also make sure it's all secure. And this is the way that I've done it, because I used to do it another way. My handles would pop and crack all the time, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And so I started doing it this way, and I think what it is that the clay's at a certain like viscosity, maybe viscosity, no, not viscosity, that's the wrong word, but I think it just kind of helps to have the handle and the piece and the bottom part of the handle at one like water. Oh my gosh, what is the word? You're just trying to make sure everything adheres. Jeez. Anyway, let me know if this has helped you guys. I really hope it has. I need to brush up on my clay terms. I do apologize. But yeah, I do love this mug. It's a perfect size. It's a good size. And I think this mug is going to turn out to be a Halloween mug. Ooh. Uh, I'm working with Halloween things right now, and yeah, it'll be like an abstract Halloween mug. I'm trying to think what colors. What colors do you think I should use? I know I want to use purple. Purple. I know orange is so played out, but I do like orange. Anyway, thank you for watching, you guys. Thank you for watching till the end. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.